diplomatic incentives for a case of non-aggression against Venezuela continue forcefully through United Nations. United Nations experts are extremely preoccupied by United States intentions. United Nations experts have noticed that the United States administration intention to close Venezuelan airspace violates Chicago conventions. It must also be reminded that use of force to interfere in domestic affairs of foreign countries is prohibited by International Court of Justice, by jurisprudence of Nicaragua versus United States 1986 case. Unilateral coercive measures may not be applied by any state against another. 4th of December has been approved by United Nations as International Day Against Sanctions or Unilateral Coercive Measures. It should be noted that Pope Leo XIV has failed to realize that sanctions or unilateral coercive measures are unacceptable, and therefore it is not welcome that Pope Leo XIV would suggest sanctions as an alternative to military war. Both military war and economic war are kinds of war. Perhaps it should be explained as Pope Leo XIV is a citizen of the United States and he might be conceding to his own country necessity of disseminating a narrative of coercion towards another sovereign state, such as Venezuela, which has absolutely no intention in being coerced by economic sanctions as proposed by Pope Leo XIV. Military escalation that has resulted in an excess of 80 extrajudicial killings is a crime of war, and those people who have ordered such extrajudicial killings on international waters are subject to criminal prosecution for homicide. That includes President Donald Trump, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. It is unacceptable that these three war criminals are actually transferring blame to their subordinate admiral. Fortunately, Congress and Senate of the United States is extremely concerned about this unwelcome development, and they will use all powers at their disposal to stop Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, and Pete Hegseth from continuing harassing civilian fishermen in the Caribbean Sea. It would be terrifying to imagine how awkward their military land intervention into Venezuelan territory would become, as it would entail immediate sacrifice of United States Marines and Venezuelan soldiers. United Nations experts also addressed a lengthy historical list of United States interventions in most countries of South America, Central America, and Caribbean. Such interventions must not be repeated, as all countries are sovereign and their internal affairs must be solved domestically. Venezuela, fortunately, is exercising full powers of deterrence within its territory. Venezuelan aviation authorities have informed that a non-authorized aircraft which entered Venezuela from the east has been shot down at Pedro Camejo municipality of Apure state. Transponder was off and the airplane did not obey several warnings that it was supposed to leave Venezuelan airspace. Many days have elapsed and the United States shows no intention, no willingness to fire against Venezuela. It is likely that Venezuela already possesses Oreshnik medium-range hypersonic missiles. Suggestions by a variety of Russian officials clarify that such technology transfer is well within the bounds of the recently signed Venezuela-Russian strategic partnership. We must remember that President Alexander Lukashenko of Belarus is very confident of his firepower as he already holds Oreshnik missiles. Therefore, President Nicolás Maduro of Venezuela may also be confident on his deterrence power as he can also deploy maximum deterrence offensive capabilities. Decisions of foreign interference from the United States have caused harm to their own country, as missiles deployed in Venezuela are capable of reaching Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, Guantanamo, Honduras Air Base, and Florida. Protection of national sovereignty is absolutely necessary, and Venezuela will never again tolerate being considered as United States backyard. It has been humiliating for Latin American countries to have been dismissed as a United States backyard. Perhaps other Latin American countries are yielding to United States pressure. However, as time goes by and they realize that Venezuela successfully breaks away from United States umbrella, populations from Latin American and Caribbean countries will propose to their governments to ease their negative perceptions against Venezuela, and we should eventually ally in common defense against United States. It is fascinating to witness troubles arising in United States media as they must handle 73% objection of intervening in Venezuela. Such pressure is being felt by representatives and senators from both parties who realize that their prospects for re-election will wane if they support such a war. Twice already the matter has been discussed in Congress, and support for a possible Venezuela war up to now had won at minimal difference. The measure requiring Donald Trump to ask permission from Congress, which is expected to be voted next week, might this time pass, as the United States public opinion has sent a strong message to their Congress that they would not like to be involved in a Venezuela war. Relations between Venezuela and the United States, however, will remain rocky even after avoiding invasion, because we still have the issue of sanctions or unilateral coercive measures, of which there are over 1,000 of such sanctions. Venezuela has not yet learned how to trade massively with its allies China, Russia, and Iran, completely overcoming United States unilateral coercive measures, as those countries are also learning how to trade among themselves. We are still in a transition period of prior American dominance towards a multilateral utopia that is just being formed. There are small countries such as Panama, Trinidad and Tobago, Paraguay, and Ecuador who are absolutely yielding to United States pretensions of blocking Venezuela, a fellow Latin American culture, and actively pursue regime change. Other countries are carefully choosing sides. Psychological war so far has been successful to instill United States propaganda on the minds of Latin Americans who have been used, along with Caribbean islands, to yield to Monroe Doctrine American pretensions. It is not necessary that Latin Americans and Caribbeans consider ourselves as colonial slaves of a decaying foreign power. If we choose to maintain this vassal mentality, United States will continue plundering our territories and mines. We must also remember that United States colleges and universities are fulfilled with students who spent their whole careers drinking alcohol and consuming drugs, while colleges and universities of India, China, and Russia are actually filled of students who actually study. It is no coincidence that the United States has decayed during the last few decades as their population increasingly behaves like zombies. The most extreme example would be the fentanyl users who act and move like zombies and provide a lot of income to transnational cartels that produce and distribute drugs, none of which are based in Venezuela. Domestic issues of the United States are being used as an excuse to harass foreign country of Venezuela. Interestingly, United States issued a level 4 alert for their citizens not to visit Venezuela because, according to the United States, this is a horrible dictatorship that kills people, that arrests people for no reason, while in fact murder rate in Venezuela has consistently decreased during the last few years, and most arrests are confined to accomplices of terrorists who are seeking regime change. It must be remembered that Venezuela's penal code on Articles 128 through 143 declares a traitor to the homeland to anyone who allies with foreign governments for removing the constitutional stability of Venezuela. Therefore, If you are a Venezuelan abroad accompanying any Marines troops or other invasion-related activities, of course you will be arrested. Perhaps United States State Department is assuming that anyone who would like to travel to Venezuela is doing so with the pretext of conducting a regime change, which of course is a crime. We must also remember that regime change promoters in Venezuela are associated with war criminals such as Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, and Marco Rubio, who have authorized extrajudicial killings of above 80 fishermen in the Pacific Ocean and Caribbean Sea, and they must be charged in international and domestic courts per charges of homicide. No military news of interest have been produced from the United States side. It looks like the Caribbean and Pacific Oceans are calming a bit. Perhaps Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, and Donald Trump are consumed by the deluge of lawsuits and summons and requests for clarification coming from Congress, or perhaps they are devising a strategy to convince Republicans, senators, and representatives to continue supporting United States administration war crimes. Even regime change supporters are slowly realizing that their cause is lost. And now they are promoting a narrative that only Donald Trump should be trusted and not the legal or political system of United States as a whole. According to regime change propaganda supporters, the Democrats Party is also terrorist against American values, and its sole purpose is to destroy Donald Trump's policies, while Donald Trump is portrayed as the true savior of Venezuela. We must remember that Venezuelan exiles rooting for regime change are expecting to ruin the lives of foreign soldiers so that they come back into Venezuela and take high office on a new dictatorship where they would harass ordinary Venezuelans who have endured resistance during all this time. Unfortunately, we are already at a low-level civil war where Venezuelans within the homeland are resisting foreign invasion, which means that exiles who would like to promote regime change so that they enter Venezuelan government without having fought for it are becoming enemies. Such civil war of Venezuelans within the homeland against exiles promoting regime change will accrue on social media, and while exiles have more funding and more followers than Venezuelans in the homeland, such situation could revert as military foreign invasion fails to materialize. Venezuelan authorities are likely to be weighing their newfound power as we are likely to already hold nuclear missiles or Resnik. Venezuela is now capable, just as North Korea, of inflicting serious damage to the United States. This mutual deterrence scenario should be beneficial for world peace, as mutual deterrence suggests caution from both sides. Humanity must be prevented from suffering World War III. Therefore, dialogue and communication between various governments under the framework of United Nations remains the most preferable means to solve discrepancies between various nation states.